is inspiring us to look around, to be prayerful, and to allow God to speak to us and speak through us, that we might speak to others. It's good to be here tonight, amen? Amen. Let's give God a hand clap of praise. Somebody said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Tonight, just for a few moments, we're going to get out of here early tonight, but just for a few moments, we're going to look at Mark, the Gospel according to Mark. If you know anything about Mark, Mark is the Gospel of action. Mark is the Gospel of action. It shows the rapid movement of Jesus as he moved from place to place in his ministry. So it is known as the Gospel of action. When we look at this book of Mark, we will notice that it's a very short book. And the reason why Mark is so short is because he does not get into all of the gruesome details that the other writers get into. He's looking to capture the movement of Jesus as he goes from place to place and doing the work of the Lord. So tonight, when we look at Mark chapter 7, verse 31. Mark chapter 7, verse 31. It says, and again, departing from the coast of Tyre and Sidon, he came unto the sea of Galilee through the midst of the coast of Decapolis. And they bring unto him one that was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. And they beseech him to put his hands upon him, and took him aside from the multitude. And he took him aside from the multitude, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spit and touched his tongue. And looking up to heaven, he sighed and said unto him, Ephrata, that is, be open. And straightway his ears were opened, and the string of his tongue was loosed, and he spake plain. And he changed them that they should tell, he charged them that they should tell no man, but the more he charged them, so much the more, a great deal they published it, and were beyond measure astonished, saying, he had done all things well. He maketh both the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. We're going to talk about beyond the limits, going beyond. Going beyond. We live in a world of fixed limits. There are physical limits, there are physical strengths, as well as physical limits. Great machines still have their limitations. Computers, as great as they are today, they still have their limits. Tonight, when we look at this text, we see that our text tells us of a man who was limited in his hearing, and he was limited in his ability to speak. Here, when we look at this particular passage of scripture tonight, we see that Jesus would not allow limitations to stop his work in this man's life. How many know tonight that man's limits and man's extremities are God's opportunity to work? If you find any limits in your life, that is the moment to turn it over to the Lord and allow him to show you that limits do not limit him. Amen. I thank God tonight that God is not limited by our limitations. Tonight he could not go beyond, this man could not go beyond his own limitations, his own limits. He was deaf. He could not go beyond his own limitation. He was dumb. He was unable to speak. Then he learned that with God's help, he could go beyond. Tonight, for just a few moments, I want to encourage you to let you know tonight that with God's help, you can go beyond your own limits. Can you do me a favor? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, you can go beyond your own limits. Tonight, what are we limited by? Some of us are limited by one thing, and others are limited by another. But I think we would all agree that we all have our own limitations. And it is good, it's good to know your strengths. All of us have strengths. All of us possess strengths. And not all of us are strong in the same area. But it's good to know your area of strength, because it is your area of strength that will make the difference in your life. But then not only must you know your area of strengths, but you need to know your areas of weakness. Because all of us have an area of weakness. Now, I know we won't admit it because we think we're superheroes and superstars, and we think we know it all. We think we can do it all. But all of us have our limitations. You know, and here, this man acknowledges, he realizes his limitations. But let's look at what happens in this text. This involves an individual with faith to attempt. Some in the multitude here in this text, there were some in the multitude that had faith that God could go beyond present circumstances. Tonight, I challenge us, we've got to believe that God can go beyond our limitations. Some of us live defeated lives because we fail to acknowledge and we fail to admit that we have limitations, and we fail to go to the one who's able to go beyond our limitations. But it's good tonight to know that Jesus is able to take us beyond. Let's look at what happens here in this text. We see that Jesus comes to this place, and he is encountered with this man with these limitations in his life. And let me just pause here to say something to you. Stop allowing your limitations to limit you.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Amen.
Stop allowing your limitations to limit you. You've got to be able to look at the power of God who's able to go beyond your limitations. See, there are so many folk who live defeated lives because they don't want to admit and acknowledge that I can't do it. I need a God who is greater to take me beyond my own limitations in life. And so consequently, they sit and allow life to pass them by. They sit in a pool of defeat. They sit in a pool of not being victorious because they fail to admit that I have limitations that only God can take me over. Tonight, this man does what many of us need to do. We need to go to Jesus with all of our limitations, because I want you to know that Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. I don't want you to park in the area of your limitations, but I want to take you beyond your limitations into I want to push you beyond the limits. How many know tonight that God really wants to push you beyond your limits? Tell somebody, God wants to push you beyond your limits. I don't know what your limits are, but God wants to push you beyond your limits. Most times when we are limited, we find ourselves in company with other folk who are limited. And because we find ourselves in the company of other limited folk, we never gain hope that we can go beyond the limits. And most of us don't like folk that will push us beyond our limitations. Most of us don't like folk to say, look, I don't care what your limitations are. You get up and do something with what you have. Get up and work with what you have. Get up and do something with what you can do. Be the best at what it is that you can do. Don't talk about what you can't do, but get up and be the best. Look, if you are a janitor, be the best janitor. You may not be a rocket scientist. You may not be the CEO of the company, but if you're a janitor, you ought to be the best janitor you can be. Anybody here today? Anybody here say, I want to go beyond my limits. I want to live beyond my limits. I want to walk beyond my limits. Your limits will keep you bound to a life of defeat. But when you get up and say, I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust God. God, I hear you saying I can go above and I can go beyond. How many know that we serve a God who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all that we could ask or think? This man had limits. He goes to Jesus here and they bring him unto Jesus. And let me say something to you. You need folk in your life who will not talk about your limits, who will not stomp on you because of your limits, but folk who will stand in the gap and take you and your limits before an unlimited God.
Yes, Lord.
This man had some friends who took him before Jesus. And listen to the text. Look at verse 32. And they bring unto him one that was, number one, he was deaf. This man could not hear. He had lost, he did not have the ability to hear. He was deaf. And then secondly, you do know if a person is deaf, it affects their ability to speak because they cannot hear the sounds that they need to hear to pronounce their words, so it limits their speech. Here, he also had a speech impediment because of his death. How many know that sometimes one limit brings on another limit? One limitation brings on or give rise or give birth to another limitation. But listen to what happened. Listen to what he had. They came and they beseeched him. They said, look, Jesus, this man is among us. He's limited. And sometimes you ought to recognize folks' limitations. Yes. And when you recognize folks' limitations, you ought to capitalize on their strong points. Can I say that again? You see, not everybody in the church can sing. That's right. But if you find somebody that can sing, don't put them on the usher board when they need to be in the choir, and put them where their strong points are. You need to know your strong point and work your strong point. Isn't that right, Brother Ian? You need to find out what is it that you are good at and work that. Amen. You say, I know my limitations in some areas, but I do know my qualifications in other areas. But here, they take this man to Jesus and they say, look, Jesus, we need you to put your hands upon him. Because look, it's sometimes you don't want folk around you that live limited lives. You want folk around you who say, I want to go beyond. I want to step out of this defeat and walk in victory. You don't have to say amen tonight, but you can just wave your hand or wink your eye at me or something. If the truth be told, you don't want to hang out with limited folk. And if your motives are right, you ought to want to help folk to get beyond their limitations. Because after a while, their limitations will begin to disgust you. But if you learn how to help them get beyond their limitations, brother or sister, I know you're limited in this area, but I'm going to help you to get to Jesus so we can get beyond this limitation. And I just believe that everything's going to be all right. Because you know how it is. Folk will get tired of you and your limitations. Folk will tolerate your limitations for a while, and don't talk about when you start using your limitations as a crutch. I would, but child, my arthritis is just so bad. I would, but my back is just always out of joint. I would, but I got this condition, baby. Folk get tired of you and your limitations. And I believe these folk had gotten tired of this man's condition. And they said, well, we've got to do something about this. We're going to have to take him before Jesus. And they take this man before Jesus. Let's look at this text, and we're out of here in about 7 minutes. And he took him aside from the multitude. Check out Jesus' skill. Jesus will never put your limitations on blast. Some folk, in order to feel good about themselves, they've got to point out your limitations. Have you ever been around folk like that? In order to feel good about themselves, in order for them to feel superior, they got to make you feel bad. I'm talking about those negative people who are always pointing out other folks' fault, but they never see their own. Are y'all with me? Am I in the house? But Jesus will never put your limitations on blast. You and your limitations are best in the presence of Jesus. Jesus pulls this man aside from the multitude. And he says to him, now, you've been in the choir, but you kind of tone deaf. And so we're going to have to find another place for you. That's not your area, You've been trying on the deacon board, but we discovered that that's not really the right fit for you because, you've been trying to do this and do that, but I discovered Jesus didn't put him on blast, but he takes him aside. And you know what I discovered? You are a person who is teachable. When you pull them on the side and tell them something out of love, if they have any sense, they won't swell up. They'll accept what you're saying. Can I say that again? If you're dealing with someone with solid mind and you pull them on the side and you begin to talk to them and they receive it, it's an indication that they want to change. It's an indication that they're willing to change. But you know, some people, don't tell me nothing. I've been doing this for years. Baby, I'm all right. Don't you worry about me. I got me. Well, then you have to just say, okay, well, go ahead on me. With your deaf, non-speaking, go ahead on. But Jesus pulls him on the side. And he begins to deal with his limitations. Listen to what he does. He puts his finger in his ear. He puts his hand right on the spot. He pinpoints this man's issue. He puts his finger in the man's ear. Then he spits and touches his tongue. He deals directly with the man's area of weakness and limitation. How many know that Jesus will deal with your limitations? How many know that Jesus is able to put his finger right on the spot? You can go around circles, you can pretend, you can mask it, you can cover it up, but when you come before Jesus, Jesus said, I will zero in on your weakness and on your limitation, and then I'll help you to get beyond your limitation. He puts his hand on this man. Listen, this faith in action caused God to go beyond. Listen here. These men had faith. They brought this man before Jesus and it pushed Jesus to go beyond. Let me tell you something. Your faith is the thing that will cause God to go beyond in your life. If you can release your faith and say, God, I'm limited, but I know you're an unlimited God. And I'm going to believe that you can do all things but fail. I'm going to believe that you can bring me through and bring me out and take me to where you want me to go. But in spite of my limitations, you can take me above and beyond my limitations. Somebody in here ought to tap your neighbor and say, neighbor, you can go beyond your limitations. Yeah. Faith in action caused God to move beyond this man's limitations. Let's look at it. He went beyond the limits set by the hearing problem. Listen to what he does. Was it a spiritual issue? Was it a physical issue? It could not limit God, whatever the issue is. And let me tell you something. We have some physical issues. We have some mental issues. And we have some spiritual issues. And we have some mental limitations, some physical limitations, and some spiritual limitations. But can I tell you that Jesus specializes? And don't you look at me with your snooty self and look down at me because of my limitations, because when I look at you, I discover you have some too. He went beyond the limits of the man's hearing. He went beyond the limits of the man's speech impediment. This was an advertiser's dream. The man talked plainly again when Jesus finished with him. The man was taken from a life of limitation to a life that knew no limits. Oh my God, can you imagine? This man had never heard before. This man had never spoken clearly before, but he met Jesus. Some of you have never done what God said you can do. Some of you have never been where God said you can go. Some of you have never achieved what God said you can achieve because you've allowed your limits to keep you back. But you ought to look at somebody and say, today is a different day because I met Jesus and I'm going to allow Jesus to break the chains. I'm going to allow Jesus to take the limits off of my life. Now, can I say something to you? If you like your limits, if you're in love with your limits, then he's going to let you hold on to your limits. But if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and you're ready to know no limits and know no bounds, God said, I'm ready. to take you beyond. I'm ready to free you. I'm ready to remove the shackles. I'm ready to take the shackles off of you. And look what happens here. The people were shocked out of complacency and boredom. 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 Complacency leads to boredom. You don't do anything, you become complacent. Not only do you become complacent, you become bored. Not only do you become bored, you become miserable. The man had a condition, but Jesus used his condition to shock other folk. God said, I want to take you beyond the limits so that other folk around you who knew your limits will be shocked.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
I don't know about you, but I thank God. I thank God we serve a God who's able to take us beyond our limits. I don't know about you, but I thank God that God is able to work with my limitations and make my limitations my strong points. Did you know that God can take your limits and make them your strong points in life? When folks say you would never make it, God said, that's a lie. That's not what I said. You better learn how to grab hold to what I said, because I said you can do all things through Christ that strengthen me. When other folks say you would never come out of this, God said, that's a lie. I've got the power to bring you beyond your own self-limitation. I want to know tonight, are you ready to come out of your limitations? Are you ready to go beyond? I want folks to look at me and say, is that the same little Negro that I knew 5 years ago? You mean to tell me this is where he is now? Yes, I met Jesus. And he took me beyond my limits. No limits. What that song said, no limits, no boundaries. You know, we live and we let folk limit us. Can I say something tonight? I know I'm supposed to be on my way to around the corner. We let other people limit us. I'm not going to let anybody tell me how high I can go, how far I can reach. Because God, last time I checked, is my ceiling. I can go above and beyond. I'm not going to let those little puny minds tell me where and how I can go where God said I've already been destined to go.
Yes, Lord.
See, we allow folk to put limits on us.
Yes.
But you've got to understand something, that people ought never be the determining factor of how high you go and how far you go. See, sometimes when we have limits, we learn how to lean on other people. And you know what I've discovered? Sometimes folk won't stand up straight until you rip the crutch from under them. You know, as long as they have a crutch to lean on, they'll never come beyond the limit of leaning on the crutch. But sometimes God says, I have to take the crutch from under you so that you can realize that you can come out of your limitations. Now let me say something to you. Coming out of limitations is never comfortable. It's never comfortable, because it says to you that you've got to do what you've never done before. Amen. Can I say that again? I know I'm teaching y'all. Y'all can look at me dreary-eyed and dreamy-eyed. Your limitations coming out of your limitations will never be a comfortable place.
Amen.
And let me say this to you. Coming out of your limitations will never be a place where you can just breeze through. Coming out of your limitations means that sometimes you've got to roll up your sleeves, get your makeup to running, get your weave matted and messed up. It just sometimes means that you have to take your necktie loose and take off your skins and put on some hard head boots and get to work, because God said, I'm going to take you beyond your limitations. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Look at somebody and say, it's not easy, but it's worth it. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Somebody say, well, you know, I was never good in school. That's all right. Go ahead on and capitalize and do what you can do. Stop saying what you can't do and start doing what you. These people, when they saw this man who was deaf and who could not speak, they were shocked. They were shocked. They were astonished. They were amazed. They were greatly surprised. When was the last time someone marveled at your life? When was the last time God did something so great in your life that people had to wonder, how in the world did that happen?
Praise God. Praise God.
When you were at the bottom and God stepped in and said, let's go beyond your limits, and he took you from the bottom and put you on the top, folks said, how in the world did that happen? You must have cheated. You must have done. No, I didn't do anything but put my faith in Jesus. They were shocked. They were amazed. They were astonished. And let me tell you something. Astonished people have an effect on the world. Let me tell you something. When folks start seeing stuff in here, guess what they're going to do? They're going to run out of here and go out there and tell somebody. But as long as everybody complacent, status quo, mediocre, same old, nobody's blossoming, nobody's developing, nobody's blooming, nobody's changing, it ain't nothing to tell. You were poor. You were standing up giving your poverty testimony last month. You were standing giving it in 2010, 2012, 2014. Now we in 2015, and you still standing up talking about the same old poverty stuff. Baby, ain't nothing to go and tell anybody. But when folk come in here and say, I came in here, didn't have two nickels to rub together. No, I didn't have a pot to do my business in. No, a window to throw it out of. But I let God take me beyond my limits, and look at me now. I have a bank account, I have a car, I have my own house. Look at God. Somebody gonna run out of here and say, baby, God is in the blessing business. I don't want to sit my whole life with dead heads who are just complacent and happy. There got to be some folk that say, I'm ready to come from the bottom and get on the top. Is there anybody here say, I'm ready to come from the bottom and go to the top? I'm ready to come out of complacency. They were shocked. They went out and talked about what God had done. They went out and said, you got to see this man. He came in bad shape. But you want to see him now. He came in with rags and now he's walking in riches. Oh, I wish I had somebody. He came in with a walker and now he's dancing. She's dancing all around the church because God took them beyond the limits. They came in asking us to pay their light bill. Now they're looking around for 2 or 3 people in the church who they can pay their light bill because God took them beyond their limits. You want to look at that? I'm coming beyond. I'm coming out of my limits. Let me tell you something. You don't need an amen corner when it's time for you to come out of your limits. I don't care what anybody think. I'm coming out, and I'm coming out with my hands up, giving God the praise. I don't care who doesn't like it. I don't care who walks out. I don't care who stabs me in the back. I don't care who roll their eyes at me. I don't care who talk about me. I'm going to walk out into the limitless boundaries. God will shock us. He will shock us. They were astonished beyond measure. Their words were, God can do anything but fail. Oh, I thank God tonight that God can do anything but fail. Won't he take you beyond your limits? Won't he take you beyond your own self-inflicted limitations? If you trust him. You've got to have faith to believe that God can and God will do anything but fail. We thank God tonight. Don't live with limits in your life when God has come to set you free from your limits. God bless you. God keep you. Tonight is our prayer. Once again, let me give you a few